brothers. We're happy and we're singing and we're colored. Give me a high five.
Welcome back to the channel. This is Paul, aka Paulie Rock, and I hope everybody is doing well and had a safe holiday. Today we're going to review the first 2 episodes of Marvel Studios Hawkeye, entitled Never Meet Your Heroes and Hide and Seek. Now, Hawkeye's been one of my favorite characters for a while. My first experience with the character was Avengers 89. It was an old comic book with my dad. It was the very first comic book I ever read. Now, in the story, Hawkeye gets replaced on the team by Falcon after being demoted by the government. Now, Avengers Reserve members only get $200 a month, so he has to take a security job to make ends meet. He runs into a battle with the X-Men villain Deathbird and defeats her by throwing her in a giant net because she's a giant bird woman. He defeats her with his guile and his skill as somebody who has no powers up against somebody super powered. Then he kisses her as the police are taking her away, and for some reason she does that, which is, in 2021, that is definitely assault. Now, Hawkeye is played by Jeremy Renner, who we finally get to see separate from the team, and I was hoping that with this new show that we get to see more of his motivations, his personality, separate from the team, because we only see him in bits and pieces in the Avengers movies. Joining him in her first MCU appearance is Kate Bishop. She's the former socialite played by Haley Steinfeld. Kate was first appeared in Young Avengers number 1, but she wasn't officially given a name until Young Avengers number 12. She was just named Hawkeye until she was given the name officially. The show seems to draw a lot of plot points and characters from Matt Fraction and David Aja's run from 2013. The trade or collection is called My Life as a Weapon, which you should definitely pick up if you like the show. And it really establishes the relationship between Clint and Kate, for the going forward. It's I feel like Kate fully becomes a fully realized character. Now, the show takes place 2 years after Avengers Endgame, and it feels like a Netflix show because Kate is dealing heavily heavily influenced by the Battle of New York. One of the issues a lot of critics have of Marvel is that if you're a casual watcher of these movies, that you wouldn't be able to follow along. But I always like the connective tissue between Marvel because it feels like one big narrative, and that's what drew me to Marvel in general. Now, the show starts with Clint still dealing with the effects of Natasha's death and her sacrifice, which is very appropriate given their relationship and what happened. I appreciated it because I feel like this is going to factor in his relationship with Kate, and I feel it's going to mirror his relationship with Natasha. If you've seen Black Widow, you know what I'm talking about. Also on the docket is Clint still dealing with the significant time he had murdering people extrajudiciously, Punisher style, back in Endgame when his family was snapped. It's kind of hard to view that as a positive, other than the fact that he didn't just forget it or throw it away, like some movies who have their main character just murdering people arbitrarily. Snyder Cut. Sorry about that. I haven't been a fan of Jeremy Renner's Clint so much, seeing as how I always wanted to see that brash young rebel. If you ever watch the cartoon Earth's Mightiest Heroes, you'll know what I'm talking about. The guy who calls himself the world's greatest archer, which he always goes up against people stronger than he is, but kind of reminds me of Hawkeye in his later years, where he becomes a veteran who tries to train people and lead them like Captain America did for him. As for Haley Steinfeld, I feel she pretty much nails the young Kate Bishop. I feel it was a challenging role to land, given that she can become quite annoying as Kate is stubborn and sarcastic. But she comes off as a little sister type, and you can see the potential in her. She never comes off as arrogant, and as a young woman you can understand she feels invincible, but she comes off as very believable, if not relatable, even for a rich girl. Where Hawkeye falters for me is the world building. It may feel like nitpicking, but basically more of the problems with the MCU kind of rear their head in this show. Hawkeye is a minor celebrity, but at this point he's getting comp meals at restaurants in New York, and I ask how? How is he known well enough to do that? It's not like they do interviews on TV or have a PR department. Did he frequent that establishment before? Also, I do like the addition of Tony Dalton as Jacques Duquesne, the swordsman. But my problem is the character motivation. I feel like he has no connection at this point with Clint, as opposed to having a relationship with Kate. And I feel like Marvel does they have a habit of using one character to elevate, one well-known character to elevate another, and take one character's backstory and gives it to another character, when Kate has her own backstory that they could have used and separate from Hawkeye or Clint, and then combined the two in a narrative. They in the comics they tried to give her some cliche sexual assault motivation, but I feel like just having a character influenced by another, it should be sufficient. I want to see the two characters stand on their own without you using one to basically job to another. Now there's a mystery going on between Clint's Ronin suit and sword, which I feel like is a stretch. For some reason Jacques wants it, but they don't really give any insight into why, other than he collects them. They could have easily used Jacques as a mentor to Clint, because that's what happens in the comics, where he teaches Clint how to use a sword, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. But what is the deal with the Avengers being so sloppy with their equipment and technology that it just breeds supervillains that people have so much access to it? They said in the show that Ronin's sword and suit were recovered in the rubble Avengers compound, but I could have sworn that Hawkeye had his sword running around in Endgame. Maybe that's an oversight, but that did kind of ring kind of weird to me. Also, the reasoning behind Kate's distrust of the Duquesne family seems kind of thin also. She has a distrust of Jacques because he's engaged to her mom, but she didn't even know him right off the bat. So she decides to follow him after their interaction, but she never sees any explicit illegal activity. So as a catalyst for what drives the story forward, it seems kind of off to me. Pretty much, like, Jacques just seems like a rich guy who has affinity for swords, seems a little eccentric, and trying to buy their sword seems kind of on brand to me. A friend of mine suggested that maybe it's an instinct to protect her mom, but she was no way incensed by her interaction with Roman, so I don't know why Kate would then feel that they were some people to not be trusted. Before I give my review, I just wanted to touch on one aspect that marred the experience for me, but it didn't factor into the review, but it does factor into kind of my thinking when I'm watching the show, and it's none of the show's creators' fault. It's just something that I can compartmentalize. Is that it's gross that Marvel does not pay its creator a fair wage to compensate them for their contributions to these billion-dollar franchises, the millions in dollars that they make from the streaming service. It's like they take David Aja's whole flow, his whole creative identity for promotional merchandising, and pay him little to nothing. They pay him a 0.5%, $5,000, and they make billions of dollars. They don't bring the artist on to do storyboards like I've seen them do with the Matrix. As far as I know, they brought in Matt Fraction as a producer, but he probably gets paid not even close to what he should get paid for the fact that they took characters that he created. The Tracksuit Mafia, they took that from him. The I know it's all work for hire, but it just comes off very, very, very gross. Having your work recognized by billions worldwide is in and of itself is an achievement, but sometimes you want to be compensated. Everybody has a mortgage, everybody has debts to pay, and you shouldn't work for not getting compensated for your work. So my message to Marvel and DC for that matter, or anybody who does that work for hire stuff and not compensate people for what they deserve, is pay what you owe. All right, pay what you owe. That being said, the first and second episode of Hawkeye by Marvel Studios, I have to give Never Meet Your Heroes a 3 and Hide and Seek a 3.5. I feel like the show's average at this point. There's nothing that stands out to me. There's nothing that that is must see. Is nothing that I feel is going to, so far, that's going to be add to the overall narrative. I feel like this is, right now, it's mostly throwaway at this point. But I'm still gonna watch. I'm still gonna see how this show ends, and I hopefully that my mind is changed to where I can rank it a little bit higher. That being said, thank you guys if you joined me. Subscribe if you like the content. Try to put out some more videos. Obviously this is very time consuming and hard, but it's something that has been very good for me to be able to do. Got the creative juices going. So with that being said, guys, take care of yourselves, take care of your family, and take care of your mental health. Take care of your peace, and have a good night.